the #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.
Good morning, guys, and welcome to episode 162 of Costa Rica Real Estate and Investments with me, your host, Richard Beckson. Today, we're going to be talking with Gabriel from Central Capital Solutions. We've had him on the podcast before, but I just had actually a client go through the process with him. So just kind of really wanted to kind of update you on the process so that you understand it. You also understand the fees involved and how the banks and everything work here. For anyone looking to do financing here in Costa Rica, I mean, they offer lending solutions for expats looking to basically buy or develop in Costa Rica. They're kind of a middleman between the banks here and kind of really facilitate the process for you and can sometimes get you better rates than actually going directly with the bank. So we're going to be talking to him about his experiences in Costa Rica and also advice when it comes to financing here in Costa Rica. Remember, guys, if you're doing anything in Costa Rica, feel free to reach out to us, info@investingcostarica.com. That's info@investingcostarica.com. You can also go to our website, investingcostarica.com as well. So again, we do a variety of different stuff, so you can feel free to reach out and chat to us. I mean, we're already working with quite a few of you. We've actually got quite a few we're actually helping relocate as well and kind of start businesses and build here and develop, I think from hotels to commercial to homes. And finding land as well in the right location. We're kind of we like to help people, kind of really find the right location that kind of really fits their lifestyle and just make sure that they understand the pros and cons of every single area in Costa Rica. So remember, you can contact us, info@investingcostarica.com. But let's get straight into the podcast with Gabriel. Good morning, Gabriel. How are you doing?
Hello, Richard. Happy to be here. Very good. Thank you.
Awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming back on the podcast. I know that we did a podcast a while back about financing in Costa Rica, and we've actually worked together on a few things here. Most recently, the purchase of a condo with a client of ours. But I appreciate all your help. But I wanted to kind of just get you on here, and go a little bit deeper and answer some of the questions when it's coming to financing to Costa Rica. Definitely, the market here is opening up to financing, as you can see with guys like yourself, BAC, Lafise, BCT, and other private loan companies kind of coming out of the woodwork. So it's good to see, because it kind of keeps the market kind of moving here, whereas before it was only cash. But, well, Gabriel, my first question to you is, I always like to get an update, on kind of what you're seeing in the market from the volume of your own business. Is it growing? Is it slowing down? Because you have the viewpoint of also North America and here in Costa Rica. Generally, what are you seeing?
Yeah, it's still a very strong market. I think that people are just a little more conservative, depending on where they're from, depending on the line of business they're in, depending if they have a job or switch jobs and so on. But the reality is that everything is still growing here, whether it's the construction. I think that a lot of people are still wanting that little slice of paradise where they buy land, and then, being able to build on it, their dream home and so on. But on my end, just to answer your question real quick, it's growing, it's exploding even, because the reality is that financing hasn't been an option. Let's just put it that way, apart from vendor takebacks in the past, or buying cash, or even private lenders once in a while. But now with the banks, as you mentioned, so clients are just eager to understand as well, because the process it's literally, backwards or black and white versus what we're used to seeing in North America as well. So.
Yeah. If you were to compare what you're seeing in Canada, because that's where you're originally from, with regards to volume of work, just because I spoke to some, people in real estate up there, and they're like, wow, it's a real slowdown, developers, people building, it's like they can sense, they're seeing it, that slowdown. Here in Costa Rica, are you seeing a slowdown from your business, or is it still going gangbusters? I think you just answered that, but I just wanted to kind of just see how the two compare.
Yeah, no, it's very fair, and it's also nice because I obviously discuss with a lot of people, but development wise and different developers in the area here, what I hear from most Canadians, it's either they're just trying to find still like a second home or some place where they can just get away, because the reality is they can work remote and all that stuff. So the 6 months type of snowbird situation, or on the flip side, it's developers that are trying to diversify. So they're trying to, all their eggs in one basket in Canada is not working right now, because like you said, the market's going down. So the conversion rate hurts, of course, from Canadian to USD. But in reality, it's more of, okay, so we take that hit once, we go to somewhere where it's actually growing. And, there's Costa Rica is full of land. It's more the fact of, if they're willing to break their teeth just to get going, which is always the first couple miles are always the toughest. Sometimes even farther down the road, it's still tough, but the reality is, when you get through it, it's actually worth it. So.
Yeah, we've actually got quite a few Canadian clients we're actually building houses for. We had, help them find the land and go through the whole process of design and building. So it's actually kind of nice. I think we're seeing an influx of Canadians moving to Costa Rica. I mean, I'm seeing more demand from Canadians than I am from Americans at the moment for moving here.
Yeah, I agree. Many years, of course, and there's the cold part, but there's also the attractiveness of being in Costa Rica. I mean, the reality is oh my gosh, I really like your expression, Richard. I mean, it's a slice of paradise, right? That's the reality as well. So it's a dream of theirs, and then when they get here, it has its other complications, but if you're adapting to the place, it's amazing. So.
Yeah, I always say to people, like, look, you're just going to have to go with the flow here. Like, don't try and swim against it because it will just drag you away. Just like, it is what it is. You're not changing it.
Agreed. Totally agree. If I keep telling that to people all day long, it's either you adapt to Costa Rica because it won't adapt to you. And Correct. It's like, I want to do things fast. And like I tell people, there's 3 speeds: slow, slower, slowest. So don't try to go fast because it's not going to work here. So
yeah. And don't try and change it. That's the beauty of this place, it's different. So, but
Agreed.
Have you seen a change in your clientele buying in Costa Rica and working with you guys?
I have actually, because I find that I'm sorry, I don't have the word in English, but in French, I have it in French in my head. It's like the median, like age, the regular median age bracket, I find has dropped drastically, because people that just had, example, $100, $200, or $250,000 cash, well, then they can actually, or even $50,000 cash. Now they actually have other options. If you're looking to be on the beachfront in Tamarindo, of course not. It's not something that's going to work. But the reality is that even if you go a little more inland, in towards the mainland, the beauty now is that with financing options, and as you had mentioned, the banks are starting to open up. Still has a lot of complications, which we can get to a little later, but the reality is that it's nice. Now, somebody that has, that's 25 to 35, that bracket, that doesn't necessarily, is not ahead in life, just like the 50 pluses, for example, they can actually afford now something here because they have great jobs. They just don't have the cash to be able to put down, $300,000, $400,000, $500,000. So I think that's really cool, because it brings also an influx of younger kids, like younger, like the newer generation, or the next generation as well.
Yeah, I mean, look, 20 years ago, I was with that generation kind of coming into Costa Rica, but we were very unique. I mean, it was mainly, retirees, snowbirds kind of coming to Costa Rica, not that many young people. Whereas now, not young anymore, but like, it's, you're definitely seeing those, people in their late 20s, early 30s, a lot of the time with families as well, not always, but that are just, they can't get on the property market just because it's ridiculous, so they're just questioning where they're going to live and what they can do, because they don't need to be wherever home is. I mean, they can live down here and have a Western style income, or it's families just really questioning of like, do I want to bring my children up in this, this environment, in this community, and in this country. And, I think a lot of people are turning to Costa Rica because, we do have a lot of alternative methods for education and also kind of living as well as just conservative, regular. I mean, we have everything here.
Yeah. I think it's just it's always a question of what people are looking for. And this is ironic because I always get this as well. I'm sure you get it too. Gab, I'm gonna go visit Uvita, as an example that I get very often, and then I'm gonna visit Tamarindo, which is great. I mean, don't get me wrong, it's 2 great destinations. It's literally at the opposite of the spectrum. So accessibility, getting there, the services, very, very different. But both of them have super amazing advantages and have the downside depending on the region, right? So I agree. From there, it's mainly understanding how the little, I think you had last time as well, like the little ecosystems in the different parts of the country, which people don't necessarily understand until you've actually lived it. So I think that's a big part. But you're right. I mean, schools, regardless of the region, there's amazing schools everywhere. Everything is developing. I mean, the infrastructure, give you a real life example. I've been here for 2 years, literally in 4 days. It's going to be 2 years now. And the reality is that 2 years ago, cutoffs on internet and electricity was like a daily thing. Not huge, just little tick, ticks, tick, ticks. But now I think that the last time we got a power cutoff, like an actual cut of like over, let's say, half an hour, it's been like 4 or 5 months. So just the infrastructure that the government is putting into place, because they know lots of people want to move, lots of people want the amenities, want the fiber optic internet, and so on and so forth. So it's developing at a rapid rate, and it's just sometimes the little engine that could, and Costa Rica is getting there, so we got to give them a chance as well.
Yeah, and a lot of that infrastructure is coming from private, because again, when you want, I think it's RE&B, is it in your guys' area that do or RE.com, or someone does a lot of the fiber optic internet there? I mean, the individuals have to pay for the line to be thrown. Or, I mean, with regards to the electrical infrastructure, if someone's doing a commercial project, they have to put the infrastructure in place for water, electricity sometimes, which helps out everyone. So, I mean, it's great because, again, as I always say, when the tide rises, all boats rise. So it's great for everyone.
Yeah, agreed. It's and that's one of the beauties where it's like, even if you don't want to cooperate per se, just like you mentioned, you kind of have to, because ICE, which they take care of electricity here, well, then you have to bring the electricity, you have to bring the water, you have to bring the services. So as a developer, it's sometimes not something that we're used to seeing in Canada, because we just plug, there's the power line, that's it, that's all. Here it doesn't work that way, but it creates that nice bond where, you have to go through it anyways.
Yeah, I agree. Well, let's just change gears here and get into financing, because it's really kind of the meat of this podcast. Maybe you can give listeners an idea of the financing options available to them in Costa Rica.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, it's still there are many programs. It depends on what the clients are looking for, and like I tell everybody, it depends on your objectives, right? I mean, if you're looking for a short-term loan because you're looking to sell your house, for example, you're looking to build your house and then sell it the next 6 to 12 months. Maybe going towards the private lending would be a better alternative than for going towards a regular mortgage, because there's closing costs, then you sell, then there's more closing costs, and so on. So it might not necessarily be, like I say, a sexy option, but that's an option as well. But if we go towards the banking options, regular mortgage refinancing, it can be a cash out refinance as well. And we have construction mortgages that come into play. Most of them have different rules and regulations depending on the banks, depending on how aggressive a certain bank wants to be during a specific week. So if I just take a little step back on this, the prime rate here changes every week. So on Wednesday at 4 p.m., the prime rate becomes fixed for the following week. So from Wednesday to Wednesday, based on the US dollar, of course. So there's the Colones prime rate, and then there's the USD prime rate. So if we go base it off of that, it's kind of different than what we're used to, firstly. And then depending on how aggressive one of the banks want to be, because some of the partnerships that we have as an intermediary, kind of like a mortgage brokering service, some banks, example, BAC, 1 week will want to be really aggressive, hit the market, take the spread they usually take. So let's say, easy example, prime rate is 5%. The spread would usually be 4. Maybe they're going to take a 3.5, and then they're going to modify a little bit their terms and conditions to try and attract more clients. So it happens. It's not super common, but it happens. And if not, generally speaking, from there, if you're going for a regular mortgage or refinancing, the package deal is going to be similar, terms, conditions, which I'll get to in a sec. And then the construction mortgage is going to be slightly different, where the amount that can be lent is going to be much higher, because the reality is that the client needs to own the land. Yeah. So the land part is one of the most important parts, which we'll get to in a sec, I'm sure. But the reality is, as a construction mortgage, as long as you own the land, then the bank will lend up to 80% of the construction cost, based off of, once again, construction cost, disbursement schedule, and so on. Versus if we go directly with the mortgage and refinancing, those terms and conditions are 99% the same. Where the loan to value, so depending on the appraisal that's going to come back, the loan to value can be anywhere between 50 and 70%, depending on the banks. And then the interest rate, obviously it fluctuates, but in reality, we're anywhere between 8.25 and 9% at this time, depending once again on the bank, depending on the prime rate. I think this week we're like 8.62 or 8.72, something along those lines. So that's the reality. And then from there, the term / amortization. So for the Canadians out there, the amortization and term here is the same. There's no, because in Canada, it's a 30-year amortization, 5-year term, as an example, and then you have to renew your mortgage. That doesn't exist here. It's like in the States. So let's say the regular classic is 15 years, and depending on the financials and the credentials of the clients, we can go up to 20 years. We're working on 25 with certain banks, but we're just not there yet.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. So I think one thing that a lot of people need to understand here, or the big thing that really is a surprise for people, is the valuation and how that works here. Because typically, in North America, people are looking at comps and market value, whereas maybe you could just explain here how a valuation happens here and what's the difference.
Yeah, no, totally. That's a big the lingo I use with the clients is that's my wild card, because you never actually know, and that's it. It really sucks to say, but it's also the reality as well. So in Canada, just like Canada, the States, etc., like you said, MLS comps, comparables, and so on and so forth. In Costa Rica, there's two different methodologies. So the first one, we're going towards a regular mortgage or refinancing. The lot will have comparables. So they use 3 or 4 different comparables, and they then obviously make an average of that and so on. So that's okay. The houses, though, since there's no real MLS system, that's where the wild card comes a little more into play. So we have, and it's, sometimes it comes back really, really great. Sometimes it comes back a little less great. But to be very frank, if I compare, for example, a year and a half ago when I started this, the comps were, the comparables were horrible because they were basing it off of data of like 5 years ago.
Yep.
And plus, whereas now the companies that we use, because it's always very company based. So some of the companies, we used to use 6 different companies. 4 of them we decided not to use anymore because the employees there were, and it's no offense to anybody, were a little older. So what happens is that they were using the comps of, once again, 3, 4, 5, 10 years ago, which didn't make any sense because the last 2 years, as I'm sure you're aware, have been going like this. So when we put that into perspective, we use 2 different companies that are accredited by the banks and so on and so forth. And the comps have been coming much, much better, even sometimes slightly higher than the actual sales price. So that's something that's really sexy now. But it's still, I've still seen some appraisals for a house, $350,000. The appraisal comes back at $280,000, and nobody understands why. So then we get a second appraisal, which at the end of the day, and I'm being, obviously very transparent in this, sometimes we'll have to send a second appraiser, and then that one's going to come back, and it's going to come back at $375,000. And we're like, okay, we're going to use that one because that makes so much more sense. So it's always a little bit of a wild card. So we're hoping, but depending on the area, if you're downtown Tamarindo, no problem. If you're in Uvita, no problem. If you're in like Samara, no problem. So those like core center places. But then you go to places that have been exploding in the last 2 years. Example in my region, which is south of Uvita, even Dominical, north of Uvita. We take, for example, Potrero, Flamingo. It was always a nice hub, but now it just exploded. So those are still sometimes a little lacking when it comes to the appraisals. But so that's one piece. And then the second piece is like when you take a construction mortgage, the reality is that the land price, yes, it's going to be added into the appraisal, but the value of the land is not going to be a big factor in that appraisal, because the reality is that the bank is going to lend upon the construction. So there's probably like a 5-10% of what the land is worth. And then the other 85 to 90%-ish is going to be towards construction costs. So if you're building a $300,000 house, well, then you know what, on a $100,000 property or on a $1 million property, the reality is that it's not going to make a massive difference where the house is located versus once the house is completed, then we're in a whole different bracket. So.
But then is getting a loan on pre-construction, like building something, a little easier because of the valuation is very easy to do because you already have the like, hey, here is my contract, here is how much it costs to build. Like there's no real question over like how much it costs to build, like its replacement value. It's like, I'm building this for $500,000. Like that's how much it's worth.
Correct. The building cost, and this is where it gets a little, we get different opinions, because if you're looking on the client side, yes, you're right, totally right. If you're looking on the developer side, well, the developer, if he's, $500,000 is the construction cost, he's not selling it to the client at $500,000. Let's be very honest, right? It's not a nonprofit. So this is where the discrepancy, sometimes the clients are like, yeah, but the sales price is, as an example, 600. Yes, my friend, I agree. But the reality is that the constructor is not going to sell you at cost. It doesn't make any sense. So that's sometimes where I get a little bit of flags from clients, and they tell me, yeah, but there's also profit in this. And then is the lot included? Is the lot not included on a development, for example, and so on. So, but yes, you're correct. The reality is that it's much easier to base. The fluctuations are a lot less when it comes to a construction mortgage, because if it says 500, they're going to be more or less maybe an extra 20, 20, 50K up or down, because some contractors, sometimes they're going to boost the prices a little bit. Let's be frank. So that's one of the realities as well.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, I mean, that's why with us, when we go out to actually bid, we bid with 5 different companies, just so you can see that spread. And that spread is pretty big sometimes. I mean, like, it's incredible, and I just can't believe, I've seen sometimes where people have, just got one bid, or their architect has gone, hey, here's the construction guy that you need to use. And it's like, well, you just really have no idea of where you stand in that spread, so it's always good to get comparables. I mean, it's typical, like, get 3. We do 5 just because from 5 we go down to 3, and then from there is that we can analyze a little bit. But I think it's definitely important, especially here in Costa Rica, is to really analyze, those construction, because you can save yourself hundreds of thousands of dollars sometimes.
Literally. I mean, I totally agree, and I see this all the time as well, right? It also, I'd like to add a little piece on that, just because it also depends on if you actually want to work with that construction crew. Because if you're trying to limit yourself, or you want that, I want this crew or this architect or this, well, then obviously they know as well, so they're they're gonna boost the price a little bit, because they know they have you in their pocket, in brackets, once again. So that's something to take into consideration as well, because and last little tidbit on this is, do your research, guys, because you're gonna have a construction crew that's gonna come in. They're gonna tell you, just as an easy example, $80 a square foot. The other one's gonna come in at $150, but the one at $80, I mean, it's gonna be, half the crew's not gonna show up, and the materials are not gonna be good, and then the house is gonna be like the Tower of Peace. I mean, you're gonna look at it, and you're like, oh, okay, well, you get what you paid for as well, right? So.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is not a country to just kind of, do things lightly, because there is no recourse here as well. I mean, like, if something doesn't get done, like, good luck suing, or like, someone says, I'll sue you in Costa Rica, you kind of giggle, because it'll probably cost you just as much the construction to try and sue someone. So, but I mean, let's just jump back into kind of like what you guys do and what makes you guys different. I mean, why would someone go directly with you guys rather than going directly to a bank? I mean, give us an idea of kind of how your business works and what are the benefits of working with you guys.
Yeah, totally. I actually get this all the time, and we often get tagged as mortgage brokers, but the reality is that we're more financial facilitators, right? I've been in the financing space in Canada and now here for the last, little close to 10 years now. So I understand the market. I understand how it works. I understand the financing. I can be pretty creative. And the beauty is that we're not a bank so these are your options and that's it. We actually have we have multiple options, so different types of programs. So if you're looking to facilitate, for example, retirement funds, we don't do it us per se. We just facilitate it, make sure that everything is smooth, clear, transparent, which is oftentimes what is lacking in this country when it comes to the financing space, because it's very taboo. So one person's going to tell you one thing, another thing, and so on and so forth. Or if you're looking, we call it the home loan program, which is like Costa Rican government backed. Or if you're looking for just a regular mortgage, regular refinancing, we have those as well. And then, I have connections with a couple different private lenders, depending on if you're looking to, do a flip, or you just want the money, because I get clients that I need the money in 3 days. My friend, if that's the case, we're not going with the bank ever. I mean, there's no way. So that's also a reality as well.
I mean, how long does the process take from start to finish? I mean, if someone has something today, and they're looking to purchase it, they're putting together a sales purchase agreement, they're going to get financing. I mean, how long should because a 30-day closing is not probably happening either, right?
No, agreed. I mean, the reality is pessimistically 2.5 months, realistically 2 months. And if everything goes well, a month and a half. That's the best time frame I can give you is that. And the reason is there are multiple reasons, just like we have seen in the past as well. There's a document missing, or the client, for whatever reason, and this is also very truthfully, the client, a big piece in the beginning is on the client's shoulders. So, Mr. Client, give me all the documents. 2 days later, I get a document. 3 days later, 4 days later, I just spent 2 weeks. And that's the reality. So it's something that I don't control. On the flip side, the appraisal, let's say, takes usually 3 to 4 weeks. But for people that don't know, I mean, there's every second week there's a holiday here. So I mean, there's always something happening. There's always a day off. There's always a week off. There's always something. The person that's supposed to take your file calls in sick, and then a company has maybe 10 employees, but that employee was the only one associated to your file. So he's been sick for 2 days because of his kids or whatever. That's also a reality as well, right? So that's why if everything goes really well and everybody is like on as clockwork, a month and a half. Which it happens, but it doesn't happen very often. The classic is about 2 months. And then sometimes we'll have to stretch and then, ask for a little extension to get up to 2 months, 2.5 months, because of, once again, holiday. The incorporation that we thought we were going to use for the client is incorrect. It needs to be corrected. Transfer this and that, or client is trying to transfer money into the country, due diligence on his money. So the fund verification with the escrow account takes an extra 3-4 days. All these factors come into play, which we're like, que la vida, right? I mean, what are you going to do? So
just swim with the current, man. Just go with it. Don't fight it.
So the reality is that, at the end of the day, we're here to help. We're here to, as I like to explain to people, I'm a very no nonsense, no bull crap type of person. This is what we do. This is how it is. These are the fees. This is how it's going to end. If you're able to fulfill these steps prior. And then from there, some clients want to get a little more creative, where they're going to use a piece of their retirement funds and a piece of financing with the bank, or then mommy's going to come into play as well. Or, this is where having the right set of tools, aka the right team, makes a big difference, because everybody can do it on their own. To be very honest, very frank, if you, Mr. Richard, you walk into a bank, you go to a specific bank that offers financing, you could. What I've seen so far, and I mean, I went through the process just out of curiosity. I didn't get to closing because I just wanted to see. The reality is that if you go with the banks, and I'm going to be generalizing, of course, because I take, for example, banks that are BAC or BCT, they just literally started their program. So when a client goes there, they're trying to pass the client through the pipeline, through the flow, and oh my gosh, is it gruesome. I mean, it's the documents are all in Spanish, and then they send it to the client. The client makes a mistake. It's going to pass through 22 different pairs of hands. You're going to get 22 different versions, and then it's going to come back to you, and there goes 2 months. Or what I've seen with some of the banks, which is kind of unfortunate, but the bank has the big end of the stick, right? That's the reality as well. So 3 days before closing, you know what? They're going to tell you the LTV, so the loan to value, is not 70% anymore, it's 50%. And you're like, but guys, I'm closing in 3 days. What am I going to do? And the bank says, you know what? These are the rules because things change, because the government decided to, versus if you go through us, the program that we have, depending on what, once again, the client's priorities, sets things straight, is much more streamlined, is much easier, because we know from day one, unless, the prime rate decides to go from 5 to 10, which is something obviously we don't control. If we say your LTV is going to be 60% as an example, it's going to be 60%. So that's also something, obviously, based on the appraisal, just to make sure we talk the same language. But, we're here to help. We're here to facilitate it. Sometimes I get as pissed with the clients as they are. The reality is, the bank is not giving any answer, and it's been a week. Yeah, but you know what? It's a process that takes 2 weeks. I'm not going to get an answer before those 2 weeks are up, because that's how the bank works. So just like you said, ride the wave.
Yeah, I mean, I think where you guys can add a huge amount of value is facilitating that conversation with the banks, especially, because again, finding someone that speaks English in a bank that really understands, North American lingo and also financing is difficult. But I think also when you're starting to bring in a variety of different sources to the financing as well, when you're leveraging, 401ks or something like that, and you're leveraging other bits of assets. I mean, bringing that all together, I think can you guys add a huge amount of value in that, as well as just facilitating stuff with the banks here. Because as you said, yes, you can go into these banks directly on your own and you can do it, but like you better be on this every day.
And the terms and conditions are slightly different as well, right? I mean, the beauty with us is that since we're funneling quite a lot of clients to the different banks or different partners, the reality is that if you, example, Richard, were to walk into a bank, well, I guess you're a resident, so it's a little different. Let's say an expat walks into the bank. The reality is that the spread, for example, just as the interest rate, instead of being 4%, it's going to be between 4.5 and 5%. So you're going to have extra interest to pay on your loan. There's also like the terms and conditions, once again, when it comes to the LTV, the length. So the amortization, it might be less because, you're going directly with the bank. And I'm generalizing here, but because it's literally, there is not a golden rule for everybody. It's a case by case. So you can have the exact same case as the other, but because of where you're from, because of your credit score that's slightly lower or whatever, I mean, the bank is going to be analyzing your file a little differently as well.
So my question to you is, which is probably the question that a lot of people are asking here, is how do you guys make money, or what are the costs of dealing with you guys?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. Our mission, to make it very simple, is like, we want to democratize the lending space. So we're here because we want to try and render it accessible to everybody. And so we have a file opening fee in the beginning. which that is going to be used, of course, to actually get the process going on our end. And then from there on the back end, we take 1.55, which is added to the closing costs. So 1.55%. So we're not, very, very frankly, I mean, when you look at the lawyer closing costs and, you know, with the properties and this and the taxes and the stamps and this and that, we're actually a very, very small piece. And I get, you know, to be very honest, I often, oh, you're very cheap. Yeah, but the thing is that if I add, let's say I put 3%, the reality is that the client has to pay that 3% because the banks here don't give at all any kickbacks because they don't really care. So it's something that you know, we don't want to add extra weight to the clients. We actually, you know, the more clients that come down to paradise, I mean, the better it is for everybody as well. But charging extravagant fees just at the end of the day doesn't make any sense either. So
yeah. Look, a question I've started to ask people recently, because a lot of people are starting to move down here and go, you know, what am I going to do when I get down here? What do you think the businesses or services that are missing in your area of the country? Because you're in the South Pacific area there, if I'm correct, around Ho. So, I mean, what are those between Uvita, Tres Rios, you know, all those areas? What is the business that you think is missing? That's not, somebody mentioned the other day was an automated car wash service, but that's not an automatic car wash service.
Yeah, no, it's a good it's a good question. It's kind of funny, automated car wash service where, you know, quite frankly, I mean, it's going to cost you not much more than what we're used to. Let's say in Canada, I get automatic car wash. It costs you what, $5, $10. I mean, in reality here for 5 mil or 10 mil, which is going to be $10, $15, your whole car is going to be spick and span. So the reality is it's not comparable, right?
Yeah, it's exactly.
But yeah, no, I think it's in my area, it's the entertainment. Because you know, you go to Guanacaste, the San Jose, you have all the entertainment, and I'm not talking entertainment like you know, movie theaters and stuff like that, which would be great. But the reality is, you know, there's a lot of kids, a lot of families moving down here. And at the moment, actually, a funny story, spearheading a project for a whole communal park with a little skate park, water pad, little like a gastro park for food and stuff like that, because it's the type of thing that we don't really have down here. So there's a lot of families moving here. There's a lot of people that get together, but it's oftentimes we just get together at people's houses or the community building. The parks are not super present. There are very small parks. So it's all those things where, you know, you want to go with your kids on a Saturday afternoon. It's like we have a miniature water park, but it's which is great. I mean, don't get me wrong. It's better than, you know, 6 months ago when there were no options. But having something that's towards the amenities, towards the families, you know, like getting together, or like even restaurants here. There are quite a few restaurants, but the reality is that with the number of people that are moving here, and my wife and myself, you know, we want to go for a little fine dining, leave the kids with the babysitter. You know, there are a couple options which are really, really great, but it gets a little redundant because there's like what, 4, 5, 6 places. So adding a little more variety, because it's oftentimes the, you know, for the people that don't know, like sodas, you know, like the little deli type of places, there are boatloads. They're everywhere, which are great. I mean, it's great once in a while, but rice and beans all day, every day, it's not the type of thing that I'm going to eat. So.
Definitely. Yeah, I mean, you know, one of the things that jumps out to my mind is a toy shop. I don't know if there's a toy shop up there, but I mean, you know, if there's kids, they're going to have birthdays. Like, where do you get toys from?
Yeah, no, I agree. I mean, the grocery stores here, the BMs that we call, so the grocery stores, they have toys. There are like little
pockets of it,
like little dollar store type of things where you have like everything. So you got like paper stuff, you have the toys, you have et cetera, et cetera. So it's really great, but at the end of the day, the options are very, very limited when it comes to that. So
awesome. Well, my last question for you, Gabriel, as I've kept you long enough, would be, again, if you inherited $500,000 and had to invest it into a business or real estate in Costa Rica, what would you do with it and why?
Yeah, great question. I mean, real estate is still going to go. It's still going to go strong. You can't go wrong when it comes to real estate unless, you know, you get, sorry for the term, but screwed over. So do due diligence and all that stuff, of course. But the reality is that the Airbnbs are going to keep renting. People are moving down here. So whether it's short-term rental, long-term rentals, you know, it can be in the financing space as well, meaning that I think that there are, with some Co-op Alianza, for example, if you just want to place the money, they give good interest as a return. I mean, there are other types of programs and projects and people that, you know, they can use the funds as well. If you just want to be like a passive investor, that can also be an option as well.
But what would you do? What would you do with it? I mean, you got $500,000. Yeah, what would you personally?
I'd put it into 2 different houses, right? I mean, the reality is that with $250,000, you can build, in my area anyways, you can build some pretty nice houses, 2 or 3 bedrooms, and then the price point at which they're going to sell you're going to make a very decent ROI on it. So, I mean, that's what I would do. Even as a short-term rental, I mean, you put the money in, your ROI is going to be a couple of years, of course, but the reality is that you're going to get some good cash flowing from there. And, you know, if not, the last one would probably be like just find exactly what the community would like. Example, you know, you're opening up a toy shop here. Okay, perfect. The price point, what do people like? What are people looking for? Opening up this type of business where you're filling in the gap, I think is going to make it's going to be huge. So
I agree. Well, Gabriel, it's been an absolute pleasure having you on the podcast. I really appreciate you coming on, talking about your business, and also, you know, giving people advice and just really educating people on financing in Costa Rica, because again, it was something that was not really available, you know, even 5 years ago, even 3 years ago, you know, and I think it's great to see that, you know, and anyone that wants to get in contact with Gabriel, I'll put all of your contact details as well as your website in the description. But appreciate you coming on the podcast, sir.
Thank you so much, Richard. And questions, comments, people, feel free. I mean, we're here to help, and if we can give you a hand, make sure that you can get your own slice of paradise. We're all here. So
awesome. Thanks, buddy.
Thanks.
Hey guys, I hope you enjoyed that podcast there with Gabriel from Central Capital Solutions. As you can see there, financing in Costa Rica can be quite complicated. Even as a local here, you know, I've been through it many, many years ago, and with some businesses as well. It's an absolute nightmare, tons of paperwork as always. So having someone to kind of facilitate that does, you know, make it a lot easier as well. Again, there is a fee, as he mentioned there, 1.55%, which I believe has to be paid upfront at the time of closing. So just be aware of that. But anyone interested can just reach out to Gabriel, and they'll give you kind of a breakdown of the costs there so that you can understand. And they're very transparent on those costs as well. So yeah, and again, if you have any questions or need any help, you can reach us, info@investingcostarica.com. If you've enjoyed this podcast, guys, please refer it to someone that you think it might be of help to. Give us a 5 stars on whatever you're listening to it on, whether that's Spotify or on Apple. Somebody reached out to me the other day and was like, Rich, I thought that you'd have more downloads than you have with the quality of content that you're putting out here. But as I said to him, you know, for us, it's about quality and not quantity here. So, you know, we're just trying to get information out there, and if it can help people and we can help people, you know, then that's great. So, but yeah, you can reach us, info@investingcostarica.com. Until the next podcast, guys, we'll catch you later. Bye.
The #1 Costa Rica real estate and investment podcast, bringing you experts from all over Costa Rica.